Hi everybody, I'm Mindy Thomas, and this is Career Chat, which airs every Monday at 11:30 and Tuesday at 8 p.m. If you need a little pep in your step today and a little bit of inspiration, you want to stay tuned to this show today. We have a very special guest. I'm very honored and privileged to bring in Mike McCarthy from Southern California. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm great, Mindy. How are you?
Doing super here. We know your beaches are open and people are going crazy down there in Southern California, huh?
Yeah, and meanwhile, many of us are still fighting for spaces in our own homes. Right? but yeah, people are definitely out and about a little bit more this last few days.
Well, I'm really happy to introduce my audience to you today. You've had a fabulous career, and let me begin with, you're a two-time Olympian champ. You had a world championship, 17 national titles. You were inducted into the United States Cycling World Hall of Fame, if you will. And I've been impressed with, your Olympic awards, bronze and gold medals, and as well as how you reinvented yourself time and time again. And you find yourself in a new chapter today. That's along with 24 million Americans that are unemployed. And as a result of your company reorging, your position was eliminated. Before we go there, Mike, I'd like you to talk about your career as a competitive athlete. You lived the dream. It was an incredible run during those years. You retired at the age of 30 as a world cyclist. Bring us back. I know you're a New York guy, originally from Brooklyn. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, it's funny because when you mention those things, I sort of do a double take and think, wow, is that me in my lifetime? And I tend to be someone who thinks that the fun is in front of me and not behind me. But it was an amazing run, and I was super fortunate, particularly growing up in New York City, to find my passion, which was a bit of with cycling, a bit of an anomaly in New York City. But right place at the right time. As everyone knows, the city is this amazing crossroads of culture, and so folks from Europe, Central and South America brought cycling culture with them. There was an amazing community there, and I tagged onto that and sort of parlayed that into a really nice 17-year run in cycling. You mentioned I retired at 30. That was not a hard choice at that point, after the run I'd had. But amazing memories, and despite both my parents' protests, I think I really did pursue my passion and live the dream. So a fantastic experience, but as I mentioned earlier, more to come.
What's it take to become a world champion and make it to the Olympics? There's so many people that haven't made it, that have worked their whole lives. What is it that drove you?
It's a sum of the parts. You can say it's talent, you can say it's the work, you can say it's the dedication, but it's all those things, and it's frankly a lot of luck as well, and a lot of stick-to-itiveness. If you quit, you have no chance. So for me, it was just getting back in day after day, and some of the days are sunny and some aren't as sunny. Cherishing the great results and the great experiences. And moving past the ones that didn't live up to your expectations. I think for me, I was pretty ambitious when I still am, but I in terms of my cycling goals, I was ambitious to a point where, early in my career, I was mocked for being forward with my goals. And I said when I was 15 years old that I wanted to be world champion.
Oh my goodness.
And everybody looked at me and said, wow, this fat kid from New York says he wants to be a world champion. That's really funny. And 9 years later, I realized that dream. So it was a good run filled with tons and tons of great lessons that I've continued to hold with me. And they're my principles of how I live every single day.
Your ability to visualize and move forward. Did you, as we hear Olympic athletes, visualize winning over and over and over again? Is that
every day,
every day?
every single day.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was visualizing the goal, and applying work to that visualization. And for me, it was oftentimes my visualization was not winning, and the fear of not winning propelled me to push myself harder. I like to say that I wasn't necessarily the hardest worker, but I tried to work smarter than other people, and I am the consummate opportunist. If you leave me the smallest opening, I'm through the hole, and that's how I built my career.
You don't come from a family of athletes, right?
My parents, my mom's an academic, and my dad worked on Wall Street, and they both played sports when they were kids. Neither of them really understood cycling, nor did they approve of my pursuit of athletic excellence. Mm-hmm. They would have both preferred to see me go to school and take a kind of, the standard path through life. And there's risk in that, right? Mm-hmm. In hindsight, I'm really glad I did it the way I did it, but at the same time, if it had gone wrong, it could have gone really wrong. Mm-hmm. So again, that's where the luck comes into play.
Well, what's interesting and what struck me about your background was you had reinvented yourself several times over. And after you retired from your career as a professional athlete, you then moved into Wall Street. I didn't know your dad was on Wall Street. So you took your love of finance and went 16 years on Wall Street. Can you tell us a little bit about that career?
Yeah, so when I decided that I wanted to be done with bike racing, I had a year left on my contract, and I sat down and I made a list of what I saw as opportunities. And some of those opportunities were cultivated through my years in cycling. Others are just things that I thought would be kind of cool ways to spend, the next chapter of my life. As it turns out, I had a close relationship with Tom Weisel, who at the time was the chairman of Montgomery Securities. And Tom had always told me that when I was finished bike racing, I'd be a great addition to his trading desk. And so I called him on it a year before I was ready to retire, and flew to San Francisco from New York, did the interviews, and found a nice home for myself there. It was a massive segue, but it also put me into what I like to call the most dynamic, repetitive work environment that you can find. It can be really exciting, but it's essentially the same job day in and day out. And it took me 16 years to then, reinvent myself again, make another transition. But what I found during that 16 years is that I like to build things. I don't necessarily love the steady state work if it's the same day in and day out. So everything's a learning experience. But that was a great run, something that, again, I don't regret doing at all. But the following chapter certainly suited me, I think, to a T.
That was an interesting blend of your cycling, the third career that you had, a blend of cycling and finance. It converged, and you began working for a startup in Southern California called Zwift, ZWIFT. Tell us what they do and how they do it.
Completely pragmatic decision at 40 years old to leave a perfectly good career, or 45 years old to leave a perfectly good career on Wall Street, making a nice wage with 3 kids and a dog, and I'm going to go work for a startup. Again, did not get family approval or parental approval on that one, but when I saw the product, I was close with the CEO, Eric Min. We had grown up bike racing together, and Eric had shut down, transitioned out of a fintech startup that he built, and was starting his next company, which was Zwift. And he came out to pitch me for his friends and family round, and I said, well, if you want my money, you can go speak to my ex-wife. But if you want me, I'm ready to make this transition. And so he sort of thought about it, and he said, you'd actually be great on our team. You have credibility within the cycling industry. You know how to roll your sleeves up. You're goal oriented. I think you can help us, move our project forward. And so within the period of a couple of months, I left Wall Street and started at a company with 10 employees. And it was just from end to end an amazing experience.
That's a virtual online app that's geared towards runners and cyclists. It's a video game, right?
It is. It's what Peloton is to the fitness crowd. Zwift is to the competitive enthusiast cyclist and runner. We call it a game. It's really a training and racing platform, an opportunity for people to interact together, basically bringing the best of outdoor running and cycling indoors, which right now is massively helpful to the millions of people that are stuck inside their homes.
The toolkit that you took with you from Wall Street and from your professional athletic career, what did that look like? What was in it?
At the end of the day, I think for me it was just the ability to make good, quick, intuitive decisions, and validate them, obviously through data, through just kind of testing scenarios. But it was really, I think, the one core competency that allowed me to do that job well was my ability to communicate with people and speak anyone's language. Not literally, but figuratively speaking. It was, my role in business development at Zwift was more of an evangelist. It was my job to go out and authenticate the product with the endemic brands, and then also to take it outside of cycling and running and show it to people, to build a business case for us. And it ended up being massively successful.
Mike, you must have one heck of a Rolodex from your early days, across industries, across every kind of industry I can imagine. That helped you in that role in business development, did it not?
Without a doubt. But interestingly enough, I mean, I was a bike racer before the internet. So many of those contacts I've had to reconnect with. In the digital age. What's the digital age? But on LinkedIn or wherever. But I've never had to apply for a job, and I've never really had to have a resume. So the process I'm going through now is completely new territory, and I'm having to go out and not rebuild bridges, but find people that I was previously connected to that I may not have spoken to in quite some time.
Well, you have a get out of jail free card right now, because everyone is calling people from years ago. It's just amazing. Yeah. I heard from a friend from 40 years ago and another friend from 25 years ago. People are picking up the phone right now. We're all in it together, and I think that we're sensing that the connection, we need to connect. With that said, the ability to find people, it's been pretty easy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if there's a silver lining to the whole pandemic, among other things, it's the amount of communication that's happening, right? And it's conversations. It's not email. It's not text. It's actually picking up the phone, and spending these occasionally massive amounts of time with people that you would never ever have that opportunity to do in normal circumstances. So, look, I guess misery loves company, but it's hard to feel bad about being laid off in this environment when there are so many other folks who are in the same boat with you. So, it really, I guess, in a way, doesn't feel out of the ordinary at all to me.
I think when you see it coming, that's a different place. I think that's a different place for people. When you're sort of blindsided, that's another place where you land.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was disappointed, you know, to have the position eliminated, and to not be able to rehome myself within the company. Um, you know, at the end of the day, I love the product. I love the people that I work with. I'll consider them family for life, regardless of whether I'm at the company or not. Um, but you move on, right? I'm not going to sit there and cry about it and think, oh, you know, the only place I want to work is back at the company where I left. There's a big world out there, and amazingly enough, I'm a couple of weeks in, and I've had some unbelievably great calls with folks, you know, that may or may not need help, but there's a feeling out there that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity if you know where to look.
Sure, sure. And your role there was as vice president of the running product division.
That was my final role. I started basically in the partnerships, VP of partnerships, and then moved on to a business development role, building that function at the company, and then worked my way into the head of the running product. But startups evolve. They go from built to survive to built to succeed. They go from generalist environments to specialist environments, and you know, at a certain point, the roll your sleeves up generalists are marginalized and don't really add as much as they did in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Mike, hold that thought. We've got to take a short break. We'll be right back.
For sure.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacqueline. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacqueline.com to book an appointment today.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Hi, everybody. We're back with Mike McCarthy, who is a two-time Olympian, a world champion, a Hall of Famer in the cycling world with 17 national championships. He's a powerhouse, and he's had an incredible career. We've talked about his career as an Olympian on Wall Street, and now he is among the 24 or 27 million Americans who's facing a new chapter. We talked also during break about going dark, going down the rabbit hole, and how that's not an option for him. Mike, let us walk through like what you do to keep yourself above board here, because as you know, people can go down that rabbit hole, get into the head trash, and not move from their chair all day because they're worried, just worried to death about their future. How do you look at it?
Well, new chapters are amazing, right? Like, it's an opportunity for reinvention, to do something you've always wanted to do, to change the scenery a little bit, to keep things fresh. But they're a whole lot better when they're self-inflicted. I think for the, as you mentioned, millions of us who've been displaced from our jobs, it's definitely, it's a little bit of a smackdown, and it is easy to go dark. I think for me, it's continuing to push things forward. It's having conversations with as many folks as I can. I have a couple of folks that I can just air things out with if I start getting really down. But the flip side of that is you also have to be careful, because, I've been on so many calls in the last couple of weeks where I think, wow, that sounds like an amazing opportunity. And then I have to take a step back and think, well, was it really amazing, or was it just something that, fit the bill right now, that ordinarily I would consider like okay, that turned into amazing because of the current situation. So I think being able to take a step back, taking a breath once in a while, not feeling like there's a massive amount of pressure, is a luxury, but also something that's really good to develop if you can.
Do you work out every day? I would imagine you do. Are you a cyclist, a runner? Do you do both? What are you looking at, like an early morning? Because you're in Southern California. I think it's getting really hot out there right now.
It is. I try to stay active. Working in such close proximity to the refrigerator is not a good thing for me. And so I tend to feel better when I move a little bit, or I get the endorphins going. So I'm fortunate. I have a great home fitness setup. I also have pretty good access to outdoor recreation here. So I throw on a mask and go for a ride, or a bike ride, or a run, or just take the dogs around the block or something. But I tend to think that's a great place to clear my head, and something that I try to make part of my fabric every day.
What about visualization? Like, you used it back in the day. I mean, when you're 15 years old, you said, I'm going to be a world champion. I also assume that you said that I'm going to go to the Olympics. Did you?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting in sport, because you can say those things, and there's a point in your athletic career where you start to understand whether or not those things are in reach or not. With rehoming yourself into a workplace, finding a new job, right? It can be a little bit different. I can put a goal on the wall and say, I want to get a job that checks these 10 boxes.
Yeah.
But you might have to be willing to sacrifice half of those at this point in time. Or things may just take longer than you'd want them to. So it's a process. And I think, fortunately, from my background in athletics, I'm very process driven and understand the need to be true to that, and that things don't always happen in a linear fashion. So for me, I'll take the good days with the bad, and hopefully the good days outweigh the bad days, or outnumber them. So
that's terrific. That's a great attitude. And I'm wondering if you write your goals down. We know that adults that write goals down, actually, their thoughts or journal, they crystallize their thoughts, and from that insight comes. Have you been journaling? Do you write down 2-week goals, 6 months goals? Are you looking at that kind of exercise to help you along at this time?
Well, yes and no. So I'm fairly disciplined in my workday, but I'm also I also respect the ebb and flow of my own moods, right? If I'm in a good mood, I know I can step on the gas a little bit, instead of I can do an extra hour or two at the end of the day, or I can start earlier when I jump out of bed and I'm excited. I'll take advantage of those things. But if I feel like I'm sitting there, banging my head against the wall and I'm not making progress, I'm not afraid to get up and walk away for a little while. In terms of the writing, one thing I did do was make a list of companies that I admired. Not necessarily companies that I specifically want to work for, but I admire them for their products, for their ethos, for their brand presence, for their mission, etc. And that's really helped me align in my own job search. Again, not in necessarily wanting to work for those specific companies, but about really channeling those principles into my next role. So mission is something that's particularly important to me. Coming from Zwift, we had an amazing mission to make more people more active more often. I love that. It's good for people. It's healthy, and it's something that I can really relate to. So, when I think, a company like Tesla is amazing. I think Nike is an iconic brand. I think Apple makes amazing products. Again, places that I'd like to work at, but if not those companies, then companies that share some of the same values and kind of work in the same ways.
That's really interesting, Mike. I'm curious about whether, when I go back to the Olympic training and the professional career, did you ever think you would lose? I mean, right now, are you taking that kind of training? Again, are you applying it to your everyday? Like, I'm going to land. I'm going to find a great company that has a mission I can get behind. Are you saying those things to yourself?
I wouldn't say them to anyone else. I think that comes from self-confidence. It doesn't necessarily need to be shared. But the nice thing is that with social media and with my network, I'm hearing them from other people, and that gives me a lot of confidence. And that's the only place I need to hear those things.
Okay.
Is from my community.
That's great. Mike, we have to close in just a minute. Do you have anything that you could convey to our audience today? Because you're in the same boat as a lot of people, millions of Americans. Do you have any parting words for them?
When I left Zwift, my initial reaction was to just go full gas into a job search, and then I realized after not making much progress in the first few days that I needed to take a step back and make sure that I had all the pieces in place to make that journey possible. I hired an amazing resume writer, Mindy Thomas.
Thank you, Mike.
No shame in saying that here.
Thank you.
And really, when I sort of outsourced the things that I wasn't particularly good at, which allowed me to focus on the things I was good at. And then I took it step by step. And now I'm in a place where I'm confident if somebody says, shoot your resume over, that I have something to send to them. I understand my strengths. I'm painfully self-aware of my weaknesses. And I'm in a much, much better place to do the search. So I would say, if there was one piece of advice, don't push on the string. Just give it a second, right? And make sure that you're in a good place to do it. People see right through you if you're not in a good place, and that is not a position of strength.
Yeah.
And in this environment, you have to put yourself in a position of strength to succeed.
Well, Mike, thank you. That is great advice. I love it. Thank you so much for being available to talk with us today. To our viewing audience, especially to our healthcare professionals, our first responders, our essential workers, thank you for your service and sacrifice. To everyone else, have a happy and safe week with your loved ones. We'll see you here next week.
Thanks, Mindy.